Hello and welcome. I am honored and humbled today as a member of the CBA's D.I.C.E Committee, which is the Diversity, Inclusion, Culture, Equity, and Engagement Committee, to interview for the CBA's Women's Archives Project, Justice Mary Jane Theis. I'd like to share just a small vignette of Justice Theis's background, but I invite you to look at the CBA website, which will post her more complete bio. Justice Theis received her bachelor's degree from Loyola University of Chicago and her law degree from the University of San Francisco. Notably, Justice Theis has served at every level of the Illinois judiciary, including as an associate judge with the Circuit Court of Cook County, both appointed and elected, 17 years with the Illinois Appellate Court, including as the presiding judge, and she was appointed to the Illinois Supreme Court in 2010 and represents the 1st District, which includes Cook County. Justice Theis has also been at the helm of numerous committees and bar associations, including as president of the Appellate Lawyers Association, president of the Illinois Judges Association, president of the Illinois Judges Foundation. And she's also a former member of the CBA's Board of Managers. But most notably, she also received the most prestigious CBA award, which is the John Paul Stevens Award, and many others. In her current role as a justice of the Illinois Supreme Court, along with 6 other justices, Justice Theis has ruled on every complex and prominent legal matter that could come before the highest court, including but not limited to issues relating to the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, pension issues, employment issues, and many others. In addition to these many legal rulings, she also promulgates the rules for the state courts. She administers professional discipline for attorneys and many other important responsibilities. It is no wonder that Justice Theis sits on the Illinois Supreme Court. Today, Justice Theis, we want to have a conversation with you and help to just gain insights for current and future women lawyers who will view this project to better understand more around your motivations and your route to success. So thank you so much for joining us. And I'd like to ask you a few questions now, if that's okay.
Of course.
Okay. So the first question that I have is around this concept of legacy. So legacy is something that's a part of your history or that people want to project or have remain about their lives and their work. So many young lawyers probably don't know your full portfolio of work and your experience. And I've attempted to just give a small review, and you've just led so many things. So the Chicago Bar Association initiated this prototype project to ensure that lawyers after 2021 will understand all that you have done and given to the legal profession. So we want them to hear about your journey and the profession. So with the background of our intention around this archives project, what would you like to leave as your legacy as an Illinois jurist?
That's a pretty loaded question. I'm not sure I'm ready to have a legacy. I became a judge in July of 1983. And my mother was proud of me and everyone was very proud of me. And about a month later, the Greylord scandal happened. And you might remember, maybe some don't, in that scandal, 17 judges were indicted for corruption. It was a time of terrible mistrust of the court system. And here I was, a brand new judge. I was proud to be a judge, and then crushed that my new colleagues could have engaged in such behavior, such systemic corruption. That's really what was found. It was not just an individual person who had, lost their way. It was systemic. It was a terrible crisis in our legal community, in our the city, as well as certainly in the Illinois judiciary that I had just joined. Some of the judges were angry at the press, angry at the federal government, angry at the people who had done it. And then there were some, what I found to be great leaders who talked about anger does not help. This is our institution, not me personally, but our institution has failed. We have to find ways to reestablish the faith and trust of the people. And I have to say that since that time, that's been my passion. How to heal this terrible breach that took place in 1983. How to encourage the public, as well as the legal profession, as well as other judges, to embrace the higher standards of ethics. Because it's my feeling that judicial independence and judicial ethics are either side of the same coin, that we have to impress upon the public and members of our profession just how seriously judiciary embraces and takes ethics seriously. So my work for all of the organizations I've been part of and efforts I've been part of, I'll come back to that. An ethical judiciary, a competent judiciary, an independent judiciary, and one that's accountable to the people. That's been my passion. I'm not sure I've gotten there yet, although I'm not going to be humble about this, not just because of me, but I do believe that over these years, there has been a healing. There has been a sense that we're a new place. Our profession is new and different than it was in 1983 when I became the judge. So if I have a legacy, I hope it's that I at least had a small part in the healing that I do think has taken place.
Thank you. I do remember Gaylord. I believe it was around envelopes and all of that, but I believe that there has been a healing since that time, that there is a little bit more, a lot more respect for the judiciary, and especially for our Supreme Court. So thank you for that. And I think that will be a great legacy to leave more faith and trust in the judiciary from lawyers that appear before the courts as well as the public. So thank you. So I'd like to move on with another question for you. So as I reviewed for our listening audience, you've really been a leader in every position that you've been in, which is outstanding. With the courts, with the committees, with the bar associations, teaching. You participated in panels with the courts on the future of the profession. You've just been a leader in every regard. And so one of the quotes that I read from the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, it says, leaders always find a way to make things happen. So in your view, what do you believe is the most important attribute of a leader as a justice of the Illinois Supreme Court?
These are big questions.
I know.
So yes, I am a bar junkie. Let me start there. I deeply believe in the importance of the organized bar and bench. That we come together and we learn from each other and we inspire each other, and we look at where we are and dream about the future and come together to work on that future. So yes, I've been involved in the Chicago Bar, the State Bar, all the different ones you've mentioned. Sometimes I get exhausted just listening to the list when someone lists those things about me. But personally, it's been very rewarding. I think a piece of leadership is engagement. It's really been important to me to be part of the discussion in the room where it happens, to be able to work with others, collaborate with others, to identify issues and barriers and try to move forward on them. Now, I'll tell you, as a member of the Supreme Court, that background of mine has been very, very helpful. I'm not sure most people understand that here in Illinois, under our Constitution, the Supreme Court not only decides cases, but administers the entire legal profession, from the cut score for the bar to attorney discipline to rules, et cetera. And for me, having taken on the role of leader because of my position on the court, it's been very helpful for me to have worked on issues with others for many, many years. As I say, there are new challenges all the time, of course, but through over the years, I've been engaged in so many efforts and initiatives that they're comfortable for me when they do come before the court. Our court today is very engaged, very active. Every member of the court is a liaison to some kind of committee. So we're constantly working on issues, whether it's jury instructions or a rewrite of the Code of Professional Conduct and the Code of Judicial Conduct and everything in between. I feel very comfortable because I've had the opportunity through the years to have had been able to be engaged on these issues with other members of the bar and bench.
So these committees then, they're made up of young lawyers and other lawyers who are coming before the court and helping you to formulate programs and so forth and initiatives?
That's right. That's right. Our Access to Justice Commission was created since I've been on the court, and it's done tremendous work. We know about the incredible rise of self-represented litigants in our courts, and while for a while we just kind of sat back and said, wow, things are changing in a big way. The court through the Access to Justice Commission has really been engaged in how we remove barriers, whether it's language barriers, interpreters. We didn't really have a very developed kind of standards for interpreters in our courtrooms. We have to, because our world is very diverse, but in many different ways. The energy that comes from lawyers and some judges who participate in these committees is what really is moving the court forward.
And you mentioned about your just passion and being a bar junkie. And I just want to say, having been a part of the CBA Bar Association and leadership myself, it's only because of that that I have this opportunity today to interview you. And I just, I think it's a wonderful thing to encourage, bar association participation and engagement. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. That would be a message I would give to young lawyers is participation in the organized bar just adds so much to your life, to your career, friendships, as well as understanding the issues of the day, developing mentors. It's a very, I think, a key part to the development of a young lawyer.
Thank you. So now in Illinois, and especially in Chicago, there are hundreds of lawyers, probably thousands. I know that you guys administer the oath every year. But if you can share with us what or who inspired you to become a lawyer?
Well, we all have our own stories, of course. Mine sound very simple, but of course it took me a long time to realize what it really meant. My dad was a judge.
Oh, okay.
To begin with, when I first was born, my dad was a state legislator. This is in the 50s and 60s. And so in my household, we talked about the issues of the day all the time. And the big issue of the day was civil rights. And so I'd hear discussion about fair employment practices and fair housing. And as you're a kid, fairness is real important. And so early on in my life, because of my dad's work, I was exposed to those kinds of ideas. He became a judge when I was in high school. At first it didn't seem nearly as exciting as being a legislator, but I would go to court and watch. And his first assignment was in narcotics court. And as I say, this was in the 60s, and this was at a time of great change in the law and change in our society. So the Warren Court would come out with big constitutional statements, and there'd be headlines in the newspaper, big ideas, Fourth Amendment ideas that everyone was, people were talking about. And that was what my dad was doing every single day. And when I'd go to his court, there'd be this, interesting intellectual kind of thing going on. On the other hand, there were also these desperately sad people who were drug addicts. And there seemed to be such a disconnect between their lives and these big constitutional issues that everybody was talking about. But in that courtroom, because of my dad, because of the lawyers in his courtroom, I could see that being a lawyer meant great opportunities for social change, to use the tools of being a lawyer, use the law, the statutes, the Constitution to change people's lives. And I thought, gee, I want to do that. And I think that's kind of the sum of how I got on my path. As I say, it sounds simple. My dad was a lawyer, my dad was a judge, but it really took me a little bit of time of watching to see what it all meant before I knew that's what I wanted to do too.
And would you, at night at the dinner table, discuss some of these issues with your dad and your family?
Absolutely, absolutely. My dad struggled. My dad, as I said, had been a legislator and had voted for many laws with very harsh sentencing. And after he experienced the lives of the people in front of him and their families, the heartbreak of drug addiction, he really changed his position in a very big way and went back to Springfield and lobbied for different kinds of approaches for treatment rather than for sentencing. And as a little, not a little kid, but a high school kid, he'd take me along. We would go to events where there were, Gateway was a new kind of drug treatment program. My dad was involved in that. And I actually got to see these people and hear their stories. And it was very influential in my life, for sure.
That's amazing. Just the background, having, really kind of grown up in the law and grown up in the courtrooms and seeing it, and then, rising to this level. So thank you for sharing that. So I have another question for you. Now, this time I'd like to have you perhaps share something with us that's not very well known. We know that really you just really succeeded in everything that you've touched. You've been a leader, but has there been any life experience or anyone that inspired you or supported you to reach your goals? Just something you'd like to share with us that we wouldn't find perhaps in the printed bio.
Well, in my printed bio, it tells you about my husband and our 2 children, and our 7 grandchildren, I might add.
Okay.
But I have to say, well, let me start here. When I first became a lawyer and a judge too, but I'm not a heroine. I was not one of the trailblazers. There were women ahead of me like Marianne McMorrow. I'm not that person. I was the next generation that came along. And there were really very few women ahead of me to mentor me or for me to pattern my way on. I was very lucky to have men mentors, and I always want to talk about that to women lawyers, that men can be wonderful mentors too. But there's no doubt that I was one of the first groups to be a lawyer and a mother. I had my 2 kids. They were 2 and 4 when I became a judge, it was the coming into a world that had always been a man's world, and now having to balance this new issue of having little kids as well as trying to be the best lawyer, best judge I could be. It's really a new issue. And I will be very frank when I say this to young women today in our profession. There were times I cried. I can't be the best mother. I can't be the best judge. I can't see my way to how to do this. How does someone supposed to be doing both of these incredibly difficult and important positions and jobs? I mean, one easy answer for me was a wonderful husband, great support from women friends, takes a village kind of ideas. My husband would drive the carpool every single day for 10 years, and my friends would pick up my kids and drive them back so that I could work all day long. And by the way, punchline is they're fine. They turned out just well. Emotionally healthy, grandkids, right? Emotionally healthy, great people, great spouses they chose, wonderful children. But what I think a lot about how the same kind of issues and pressures are on young women today, young women lawyers.
Yeah.
And you'd think after all these years we could have figured it out, but I fear we haven't. That idea that of life-work balance,
Yes, work-life balance and all of
yeah,
that. Yes.
it's still out there. And again, it's not just the obligations and pressures of being a parent and also trying to work at a high level. There's this joy that should come from both of them that I think we just, and we know that all work is not the answer either. Whether it's the issue is because, you've got kids at home or other issues in your life, relationships in your life, we need both to do a good job as being a lawyer, as a judge. You need to have a life. You need to be able to be, again, engaged with people. I hope we can continue to support young women lawyers as they continue to develop and hopefully at someday find a better answers. But for me, it was a challenge, and my greatest answer to that challenge was John T. Theis, my husband.
Wonderful. And so we're learning that work-life balance is never perfect, but it can happen if you have a great support system, and yours was your husband. That's wonderful. And some neighbors and some friends as
Can I
well
say this?
who were
Can I
helpful.
add this too?
Yes, of
I want
course.
to talk about the friends. I had
Mhm.
a group of women friends who are not lawyers,
Okay.
and they are so essential in my life.
Mhm.
They keep me grounded. They would never put up with any kind of arrogance. This whole justice thing doesn't mean a whole lot to them. They know they want to support me as a person. I think having genuine friends, women friends, is really key to keeping your perspective on life. At least that's been in my life. My women friends have been a joy and very important to me.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. I'd like to turn the tables a little bit now and ask another question. So, in 2021, and we've been talking about some of the struggles of young professionals, especially women, finding themselves right now in the midst of this world pandemic, which continues to change every week into a new pandemic, and it's now becoming an endemic, and we don't know if it will end, but we are still struggling, trying to exceed, in our careers. And your reputation, Justice Theis, is that you've been an advocate for young lawyers, for diverse lawyers, LGBT lawyers, as well as just making sure that there is a fully represented and diverse bench. I've had the honor of seeing you at many, many invocations, for new judges. But what do you advise lawyers and others in our profession that they should do better with respect to fostering authenticity in diversity and inclusion? And we'd just like to have you share your thoughts on this whole idea of inclusion, if you could.
Well, first of all, let me say I think we've done remarkably well in this pandemic. The courts have functioned. We shut down, the Supreme Court shut down the court system on March 17th, 2020. And within days, we learned about Zoom, we learned about this world, and the courts start up. And most dockets, other than jury trials, completely up to date. I think we've shown that we can be flexible, we can learn, and that's really important. The one group I worry about most are young lawyers. I just, we were talking earlier about having mentors, developing relationships. Zoom's fine, but it's not the same thing as having those long conversations where you can kind of open up your heart and be supportive and support Ed. So I do worry about them, and I'm hoping for the best for all the young lawyers out there during this hard time. But when you talk about diversity, that's a word we've been using for some time now, and I think we've seen that as a process where people who traditionally have not been part of the legal profession find a way to join us. And there are many different ways that entities and bar, certainly the CBA and others have tried to think about how do we encourage people who have not traditionally been part of our legal profession to join us. But I think we've grown and matured in how we think about that now. I think we realize it's not just county heads. We're not just looking around the room and trying to, count the people of color versus the whites. So that seems so that we're missing the point if that's all we're seeing.
Right.
I think it's important for our profession and certainly for the bench to reflect the people who come into court so they have confidence and trust in who they're dealing with. But I think even more than that, we're coming to realize that those who have not traditionally been part of our legal system bring a great richness, deepen our experiences. We have a lot to learn from them, how to make our system more fair. And in that sense, I think when we have been talking about diversity, which sounds like head counting. And I think today I hear more, you just used the word inclusion. I think we're really thinking more about, for the people who have been excluded, how to include them. That's a different idea than counting heads. And I think specifically what I'm been focused on myself is encouraging people who have been excluded in the past to step up to leadership. They know they're welcome in our profession, but I think it's time now to have a different group of people as leaders, people who have understand the importance of a different point of view, of a different life experience. So I worry about that too, because I don't always see minority groups standing up for leadership. It may be just, it will take time, but certainly that's something that I've been talking about a lot, that this is the time now to come to the head of the class and learn something about leadership.
That's amazing. And I really respect your comments on inclusion. Being an African American lawyer, this is very important to me. And I really wanted to have you speak on it. And I guess one follow-up question I have is, now that we're in Zoom and the virtual space and transparency, do you find that might be helping lawyers to perhaps get before the courts a little bit more or get into spaces that they wouldn't normally? In other words, is the virtual space helping inclusivity a little bit more, would you say?
I don't know that. I hadn't thought about that. I mean, it's a whole new world, and in some ways, I feel like there's more intimacy on the screen. I mean, I can see your every reaction. I'm looking around your office, all that kind of thing. There's some kind of connection that we really do have on Zoom that we might not have in kind of a cold courtroom. You're standing 8 feet away from me or something like that. There is some kind of contact. Whether or not that develops inclusion, I'm not sure. I'd have to think about that, but that's a real, I'm going to pursue that. Thanks for raising it, Greta.
Yes. So now what I'd like to do now, Justice, is just give you an opportunity as we come to the close. If you have any final remarks that you'd like to make for the Archives Project, I'd like to give you an opportunity to add anything.
Thank you. One of the things I say often to young lawyers is this. I would predict that if you look deep in your heart and ask yourself, why did I become a lawyer? At some level, you made that choice because you wanted to make the world a better place. You wanted to work for justice. And I predict also that as you think about that, you've already learned that the day in and day out practice of law is very hard, very time consuming, very emotionally draining, and it can be really easy to lose sight of working for justice, of setting the world on fire. So that's my last message to young lawyers. Keep searching for justice, keep looking. It's there. You've chosen a wonderful profession where you can use your skills and talents to heal the world. I wish you all the best.
Justice Theis, what can I say? Thank you. As a sitting justice on the Illinois Supreme Court, we just are so excited that you took time out of your busy schedule to share your insights on leadership, legacy, inclusivity. These are such important topics. And although I haven't had the opportunity to personally stand before the Illinois Supreme Court, I feel really honored and humbled to be in your virtual presence today. And, just to elicit these thoughts to share with our membership. So respectfully, on behalf of the CBA, the D.I.C.E Committee, and the Women's Archives Project, we thank you for your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.